Energy Media readers, today we're going to be talking about e-bikes, which is near and dear to my heart because Joanne and I are considering buying a couple. And to give us some insights into the market and the technology, we're going to be talking to Ryan Citron, who's an analyst with Navigant Research. So welcome to the interview, Ryan.
Thanks for having me, Markham.
Now, you recently completed a global study of the e-bike market. Why don't you give us an overview?
Sure, yeah. So this study, we interviewed major manufacturers, did some secondary research, used our databases to really look at the global market for electric bicycles from 2020 to 2030. So where it is now and where it's going. It's a data-heavy report, so we're looking at electric bicycle unit sales, revenue for the total industry, average transaction prices, as well as the market share of electric bicycles of the total bicycle market, as well as some key trends that we see driving the market forward.
Give us some of the numbers for e-bike sales in the key markets and where you think they're going this decade.
Sure. So globally, we're looking at about 37.5 million electric bicycles to be sold in 2020. To put that in perspective, we estimate about 3.5 million plug-in electric vehicles will be sold. So more than 10 times as many e-bikes will be sold as EVs in 2020. And through to 2030, we see e-bikes going from that 37.5 million to about 44.5 million. Not a massive jump, and the biggest reason for that is we actually see sales in China are going to be decreasing over the next 10 years. It's a pretty oversaturated market. It is a huge market accounting for about 30 million annual sales. We see that decreasing, but the rest of the world is really growing quite fast. And we see that predominantly in Europe. We see that in Asia-Pacific, sort of non-China countries in Asia-Pacific, such as Japan, India, Vietnam, Australia, New Zealand. These countries are growing a lot. And then in North America as well, we are seeing a burst of sales too.
Are you seeing growth in the markets where climate is an issue or isn't an issue, let's say? So along the coast where it's temperate, you don't have winter climates. That would be my take on it. But what does the data say?
Yeah, California and Florida are really big markets for e-bikes. There's no question, and the west coast of Canada as well. There's no question where the weather is more favorable. They tend to do better. At least that's the case in North America. In Europe, you do see, the Netherlands and Belgium, some of these other countries, Germany. It still gets quite cold or rainy there, but people are still buying them because bicycling is just a bit more a part of the culture there. But for North America, for sure, weather has a significant impact. And I think that your question sort of related to, is it related to climate change and climate impacts? And you do see anecdotally a fair bit of riders that are wanting to get into e-bikes because maybe they want an electric car, but it's $30,000 and this is too much. So for $1,000 to $3,000, they can find their entry point into the electric transport market through an e-bike.
Is there any chance that as governments tighten up their climate emissions or sort of greenhouse gas emissions using climate policy, that they'll put more of an emphasis on e-bikes, maybe increase subsidies, for instance?
Yeah, I think so. We're seeing a couple of countries in Europe provide purchase incentives for electric bicycles, as well as the Netherlands just instituted an e-bike purchase or a leasing scheme, I should say, for businesses so that they can have their employees ride e-bikes to and from work. I think that's going to become a really increasingly interesting place to look because I was just talking about this with a colleague. There was a recent survey from the National Institute of Transportation in the US, and they surveyed, I think it was a couple thousand e-bike riders, and 76% of the trips that these e-bike riders took were replacing what they otherwise would have taken in a car. So I think e-bikes are actually replacing a lot more car trips than people think, much more so than bicycle trips, for example. And I know I can relate as I have an e-bike, and tons of the trips I do are replacing what would have been done in my car.
Are there any, and this will be my final question, Ryan, are there any technology trends coming that would make an e-bike, more useful, and easier for people to replace their cars? And what are we looking at in terms of price? Are prices going up or down?
Yeah, so on the technology side, certainly this relates to the whole electric vehicle industry in that lithium-ion battery prices are coming down in cost. They've reduced quite a bit in the last 10 years, and they continue to come down. So as those prices reduce, batteries account for around 30% of the cost of e-bikes. So as those prices come down, e-bike prices could also come down, which we're also seeing the batteries on the battery side, they're getting lighter. so the e-bikes overall aren't as heavy, which is more desirable for consumers. And as far as the second part of your question, which was related to, sorry, can you remind me the second part of the question?
The second part of the question was related to price, and are we seeing prices go up or down?
So I think over the long term, or the next 10 years, we're going to see average prices go down. There are more models coming around in that $1,000 to $1,500 range, with Rad Power bikes being kind of one of the main examples that you see there. Saunders is another one. More and more companies are moving to the online direct to sales to consumer model, which is relieving some of that cost associated with brick and mortar stores. So with lithium ion prices reducing, selling directly to consumers online, we are going to see prices continue to reduce in the next 10 years.
Ryan, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate it, and great insights into the e-bike market. And when we go and buy one, I'll be thinking of you while I'm riding. So we'll look forward to chatting with you again.
Sounds good. Thanks very much, Mark, and thanks for having me.